Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Experience Maker Show. I'm Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker, author, podcaster, and coach, and I'm so excited to have you here today. You know, I am wearing my favorite t-shirt. I'm going to stand up so that you can see it. It says, "Do simple better." And this is a quote from former Chicago Cubs manager Joe Maddon. And he was actually talking about baseball. He was talking about running out the hit, always running your hardest to first base and making those simple plays. And by doing the simple things, everything gets better. But I believe that when Joe Maddon retires from baseball, he's going to become a business consultant because all of his Maddonisms, especially this one, apply so much to business. And I talk about that in my new book, How Do Simple Better is a customer experience mantra, that we just have to simplify things for customers because we are so complicated in everything we do. And so take that one to heart. Hey, speaking of the new book, my goodness gracious, we're only 3 weeks away and I have a hard copy right in front of me, The Experience Maker, How to Create Remarkable Experiences That Your Customers Can't Wait to Share. It is available for pre-order on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, which I hear has already started shipping them. I didn't even know that was allowed. Walmart.com, anywhere you buy books, it is available. And so get yours today. Be one of the first to read it. And please give me your feedback, whether it's an Amazon review or just email me, because I'm all about customer feedback. Heck, I talk about it in the book. I might as well be about it in real life. All right, today we have another fantastic guest. I can't believe we've still been doing this for 76 weeks, and we still have amazing guests every week. And I'm super excited to introduce you to Tanya Thomas. She is the director of both customer experience and employee experience at Experian Health. So welcome, Tanya, to the show.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, I've been super pumped to talk with you for so many reasons. I mean, A, you're in a really, really interesting industry that needs a little assistance when it comes to experience. And then B, you've got this really interesting role where you're overseeing both customer experience and employee experience. So we're going to hit on both of those things. But why don't we start by just having you introduce yourself and also your company?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So yes, I'm Tanya. I work on both customer and employee experience, which has been a fantastic journey at Experian. I work in the health division, so we are doing software and analytics capabilities to some of the biggest health systems in the country. And yeah, I'm just really excited to talk to you about some of our priorities and some of our learnings. I think you and I are probably kindred spirits in that this is basically my favorite topic to talk about. So
I think I've been doing it for 76 weeks, right? Because I get to talk about it every week, which is so much fun. Well, that's great. And for anybody that is watching live, feel free to drop questions into the comment section on either LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, and we will answer your questions live or show your comments up on the screen. So please engage with us. That's part of the fun of this show. And so if you have questions for me or Tanya, please post them and we'll bring them up later in the show. So Tanya, when I think of Experian, I think of my credit score. I know you're in the same company, but you're in a different area. Tell me exactly what it is that your area does and kind of how you're related to the rest of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Experian's doing, big data and analytics and bringing value to the market and monetizing that in tons and tons of ways. So I'm in a vertical market. So we also serve the automotive industry. We serve healthcare. So in our healthcare division, we're really focused on, as I mentioned, software, technology, analytics, services to really help primarily with the revenue cycle management process. But also we play in a lot of other spaces. We're taking our expertise and capabilities around identity and identity management and incorporating that into our product portfolio. We also have some great products around patient engagement and, really expanding in direct to patient and, consumer facing capabilities as well. So a lot of exciting stuff going on.
So give me an example of how a consumer might come to you. What would they need from you or get from you?
So I'll give you one example, estimates. So we have a product where we're able to kind of integrate all of the complicated data going on behind the scenes with insurance and, the provider and provide real-time SMS estimates to a patient as they're scheduling different kind of steps throughout their experience. So that's one example of how we've kind of taken, behind the scenes capabilities and started to think about bringing them forward and making them patient facing.
That's awesome. I mean, especially for big things. I remember when we had our kids, we ended up getting 17 invoices for like the next 3 months from all different places. It's like, who knew that every doctor that she saw, was going to send us a different invoice, and it was so complicated. And of course, what it sounds like you're doing is setting customer expectations a little bit, which of course makes the rest of the experience so much smoother. If I know it's going to cost me $1,000 and I don't fall over when I get the $1,000 bill.
Right.
I think that's really cool. You and I have talked about this offline, but I want to bring this forward as well. Especially, healthcare especially, but let's throw in insurance too, are both places that there's just so much complexity there. And it's almost like they speak a language that's different than the language consumers or patients speak. How do you think I know this is only a small question here, but how do you think we start to bridge that gap in terms of just the communication in like explaining things to customers in a way, or patients in a way that they understand, not in a way that our industry has told us forever that we have to speak?
Yeah, your question is very timely because communications is actually the top priority for me, both on the internal side with my employee hat on and on the customer side, with my customer hat on. And I really think there's this translation layer that needs to happen, and it makes all the sense in the world for experienced management professionals to kind of be in a position of ownership as it relates to that, because we're conditioned to be thinking about, how to break down a message and make it more consumable, how to make an experience easy, like, you were talking about with your t-shirt you're wearing today. And so whether it be, the technical components of what's happening actually systematically, whether it be just the utter complication of this system that we've built here in this country, we're really focused on that. And I really think it starts with the people behind the scenes. And that's also where my worlds kind of collide, right? Is making sure that employees that are serving the healthcare industry, who then serve patients, there are really solid tools and kind of best practice approaches to how we equip those folks so that when they're communicating, it's clear and efficient and easy. And then that trickles down to the patient experience as well. And it also translates in the products, really kind of across the board.
One of the words that always befuddled me, because I worked in healthcare for a little while, was the word formulary. And I was like, why can't we just call it a prescription drug list? Like, people understand what that means, but we got to call it a formulary. Is it to make people feel like they're smarter than the patient? Is there some law written somewhere that says we have to say that? Probably not. But that's a perfect example of a word that really means nothing to any person on the street. It just means something to people in the healthcare industry or the drug industry. And I think the lesson for others that are watching, hey, you may not be in healthcare, but every industry has its own nomenclature. It has its jargon. It has its acronyms. And it's one thing to be using that jargon and acronyms in the office and talking to employees. It's another when you are talking to the customer who has no idea what you're saying. Right. And I think financial services is well known for this as well. There's a story in my new book about a bank that sent out an email to a teenager that had 7 words in the subject line, and 3 of them were acronyms. And she ended up sending a note to her dad, who happens to be a Forrester analyst, saying, "Is this even English?" And, no, it's not. It's a bunch of acronyms that mean something to bankers, but not to a 19-year-old who they're trying to court, right? So I think in any industry, we've got to be able to talk our customers' language, which is not always easy, but look for those words that, if you're out at cocktails with your friends and you say formulary and they're like, huh? Then chances are your customers are saying the same thing.
And sometimes it's something that seems very simple. So, for example, patient. In the healthcare industry, people love to use the word patient, and it's kind of an evolution for us to say consumer. Especially being in my environment, traditionally B2B environment, because the patient to your point about a child, right? If the patient is 7 years old, that's not always who we're talking about when we're talking about how to communicate the price of something, how to make, an experience seamless. We're talking about probably their parent, who would be the consumer in that situation. So, even the word patient seems like, okay, it's not overcomplicated, but who are we really talking about? And having an open mind to, are we covering all of our bases with our target audience?
Yeah, totally true. And I've heard other conversations about the word patient sometimes connoting illness. That, in order to be a patient, you have to be sick, but that's not true either. And we have lots of well patient visits, and we have, patients that are going to the doctor for checkups and other types of things where there's no illness or sickness involved.
Right.
I think that's really interesting when we start. I mean, I'm a word and grammar nerd anyway, so I love kind of diving into that. But also, I think it's true that patients over the years have become more consumer-like. I mean, we have more choices than we've ever had before on where to go for our medical care and who to see. And now we have choices to put in a telehealth way, which in theory someday might open us up to being able to see doctors anywhere. I know not right now, maybe not, but so as we have more choice, we act more like consumers. And I think it's smart for the healthcare industry to look at people that way. And as I always like to remind people in any industry, remember that the people that you serve are consumers in their lives anyway, right? So even if they're not healthcare consumers, they're consumers of books and theater and sports and other things. And so I think that's a key thing to remember. So let's dive into the fact that you oversee both aspects of this role. I'm interested internally, if you don't mind talking about just sort of structurally, where do you fit? Because it almost sounds like you might be reporting to both a CMO and to like the head of HR. So where do you fit in the organization if you're doing both roles?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, most of the functions that fall under my, tiny but mighty umbrella are things that really impact so many different parts of the organization. So for us, it makes sense for me to just report to the president of the group. And so, that's really helpful because when you have things like insights, for example, we have a very strong voice of the customer program we put in place over the last couple of years. That needs to just go straight to the top, right? What our customers are saying, what are the key themes, how are we trending? And then the same on the employee side, there's sensitivity to that, right? So I really, my function is really a key collaborator and key partner, depending on what our strategy is dictating and depending on what our customers are saying, right? So on the employee side, I'm in super, tight partnership with our head of HR, obviously, and our teams, EX and HR, are really tight at the hip with any kind of initiative. I mean, especially now with all of our employees going completely remote, there's a whole new level of, there's a whole new world of, gosh, all of the new tools, all of the technology, delivering all of that, making sure our employees are up and running. They're having a seamless day-to-day experience, right? HR, I mean, they are focused on the best, possible outcomes for our employee base, but don't necessarily bring that kind of, experience management expertise. And so we're perfect partners, in that to just kind of have that customer, the employee, top of mind in, what we're doing strategically. And then on the customer side, like right now, I said huge focus is client communications. And so that touches every single customer facing group. And what I've found is, let's take a client impacting event, for example, whether it be positive or negative, right? Something brand new we want to be promoting and talking about, or a product outage or slowness we may be experiencing. Each function has its own process for communicating and understanding the situation, understanding the impact, and being able to communicate with their customers. We need to have a holistic approach to that, right? So rather than, customer care having their own process, sales having their own process, the implementation team is trying to figure out what's going on. We're putting a whole new strategy in place to kind of centralize all of that, and make sure that every single customer-facing group has what they need, in their fingertips, probably before they thought they needed it, is the idea, right? If we're doing it right. to make sure that we can communicate effectively with customers. So you can see how, day to day, my key partners could be really any senior leader across any of those functional groups, just with optimal outcomes for our clients in mind.
So how often do you see overlap in what your customers are saying and what your employees are saying?
Almost every time.
Okay.
Yeah, and what the themes bubble up as don't necessarily always look at face value to be the exact same thing. But then when you kind of dig into it, and again, this is where it really makes sense to kind of have both worlds in view and not be thinking about them through, silos. I hate to use that word, but so yeah. So I mean, if you think about something like um, training, for example, communication and training, right? If we're seeing on the client side some themes around, the training is really fantastic when we first go live with a product, we have a harder time understanding where to go when we have turnover on our team, or when, and then we're like, oh, great, okay, perfect, let's get an initiative in place. The first place I turn is employees. Every single time we're going to address a customer pain point, there's an internal employee implication to that learning and to what needs to happen now to address that pain point. So, it just makes perfect sense. And now that I've been in this role a few years, it's hard for me to, even imagine being in a position where I didn't have so much visibility to the employee side of the equation. I really feel like it's a game changer for just the speed and level of impact you can make when you're trying to, pivot to address something you need to, I guess, improve.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's long been said that happy employees equal happy customers, and that you can't expect a employee to provide a great experience if they don't know what a great experience looks like, because maybe they haven't had one recently, or they're not having one with their employer. So I do think it's really impressive that you are looking at both of those together. I think that is, ultimately you should be seeing overlap, I think. And one of the realities of customer experience is, and what I love about it, is it's delivered by your employees. So by definition, you have different employees than anybody else, which means your customer experience can be unique. This is true of any company. When it's delivered by humans, it is by definition unique.
Right.
So do you see that? So as I started this by saying it's long been said, do you see that in your day-to-day world where happy employees equal happy customers? Do you see a translation there where when you've got your employees in a really good spot, they're delivering better customer experience?
Absolutely. I mean, what I've been kind of speaking about is more the operational effectiveness, kind of side, and the upside of that. But there's really huge culture implications to it as well, because it's, it could be something as subtle and simple as making sure that customer stories and big wins and understanding our mission and communicating about our, incredible strategy and goals, that is totally ingrained in the internal communications, which is driving customer obsession, right? And so again, that's sort of hand in hand. If we have employees that are inspired by the impact our products are making on our customers, on patients, on real people's lives. I mean, we tell stories about ourselves, our own lives, our own employees saying, this just happened to me and I came across for the first time the product that, we put into market last year, or something like that. And so I think, the cultural trade-off there of what you can expect when you have those customer stories. And, I mean, I love to say customer obsession, right? I mean, the customer obsessed companies are also the ones that we see winning in the market. And so it's not just warm and fuzzy. There are revenue implications to these things as well, which I think all of us in customer experience are always, working to make sure we can draw a clear line to that. So absolutely. I mean, in the same way we're measuring things like customer retention, and loyalty and attrition and things like that, we're looking at the same metrics on the employee side, because yes, it does translate.
Yeah, I can't help but think anytime somebody says customer obsession about big giant Amazon. And I know that there are so many Amazon lovers out there and there's so many Amazon haters out there. And I'll be perfectly honest, I'm going to take a side here. I don't understand the haters. Amazon is as good as it is because it's customer obsessed about everything that it does. It's in the value statement. And so, yeah, we can't be Amazon. We can't out Amazon because nobody's as big as they are and what have you. But we can learn from them, and we can have a culture similar where when you are customer obsessed, or as I like to say, you become an experience maker, it's about looking at every business decision through the lens of the customer. How is this decision going to impact my customer? I just wrote a foreword for somebody's book that's coming out soon, and I start with a hypothetical story of the guy in finance, and sorry guys, but I'm pretty sure it was a guy who decided one day that his airline should charge people to check bags, right? And I just imagine that conversation. Hey, we can make billions of dollars if we just charge people to check their bags. And then hopefully someone in the room said, but we've always let them do that for free.
Right.
And the finance guy is like, we can make billions of dollars, right? And then somehow the finance guy wins, and nobody ever thinks about the impact that it has on the customer. And I think that if we make decisions, yes, you have to make decisions based on profit. Of course, most of us are in a business where we need to make money, but that you don't have to do that at the exclusion of the customer. And in fact, when you focus on the customer, you often land at the profitable decision. Is that what you see as well?
I was going to say that. Yeah. I mean, the revenue comes, naturally, in my experience, when you are focused on making that investment. And a lot of times, again, with the whole employee world, a lot of times it's not massive investment from buy new technology, invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in a new tool or whatever. It's just having that coordination layer, that layer that's bringing all the right people to the table to say, what would it look like to level up? Like you said, what does great look like? Do our employees understand that? Do we understand our customers' expectations? Are we measuring whether or not we're meeting those expectations, right? The revenue is a direct result of that. And in the employee side, retaining employee attrition related to, people moving on from your company. I mean, there's big revenue implication to that too.
Or a minimum cost savings, right? Because you don't have to retrain and rehire and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. And to your point on Amazon, I mean, yeah, we're in healthcare, right? We're so far behind, but there are key things you can learn from that to say, okay, well, what do people love about Amazon? They love the customization. I log in and I know Amazon knows me based on what they're showing me, based on how easy it is for me to find how I've already interacted with them. And those are the kinds of things that we take back to, our working tables to say, okay, do our customers feel like we know who they are and we know what they need? What do we need to put in place? If it's the right survey at the right time to measure the right things so that we can be more proactive at that point in time to go, oh, we caught them. We caught them before we're 6 months down the road and they're dissatisfied and we missed the mark. We're already hitting them, right when it matters. I mean, that's not costly. That's just strategic. And, those are easy things you can, I mean, I don't want to say easy, any kind of change, in an organization can be an undertaking, but worthy things to take on with big upside.
Well, let me give you a really stupid, simple example because I like to do simple better. When I fill out anything having to do with healthcare, I have to put my legal name on it, which is Daniel. Now, the only person that calls me Daniel is my mother when she's mad at me. So I don't like being called Daniel, right? Now, how hard is it for a healthcare provider or for, frankly, any website I go to say, what should we call you? What do you like to be called? Well, I like to be called Dan. And then from then on, hi, Dan, instead of hi, Daniel, right? I see hi, Daniel, and I shiver. It's not what I want. So it's not that hard for any company to figure that out about a customer, to know your customer well enough to know the name they like to be called. Right. It seems stupid, right? I mean, heck, if I met somebody in person and I shook their hand and I said, hi, I'm Dan, chances are they're not going to call me Daniel, right? But we don't seem to feel like we can do that digitally. And it's not hard. It's not a huge investment. And plus, it's the right thing to do to know your customer well enough. The other thing I want to point out that I love what you said, and I want to sort of just tie it up a little bit because we're running out of time, is that you're looking at certain metrics that are, we'll call them experience metrics, whether they're customer experience or employee experience. You might be looking at satisfaction or NPS or something like that.
Yep.
But you are also looking at business metrics. You mentioned retention rate, for example, one of the most key customer experience metrics that you can look at. And the thing is that there is a linkage there. So if anybody watching is having trouble explaining to the boss, here's what the ROI is, it's that when your CSAT scores go up, your retention rate goes up. And when customers stay longer, they spend more. You don't spend as much selling on new customers.
Right.
And it all kind of comes together in terms of profit. And that's what we mean when we say, when we focus on the customer, the profit comes.
Yep.
Yes.
And I understand where your revenue comes from, because different models, different businesses have different models for that. So when I look into the data and I realize that the biggest portion of our revenue comes from existing clients expanding their relationship with us, that's like, ding, 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 experience is everything, versus maybe a different business model where you're taking on new customers every day, and then your focus maybe would be shifted elsewhere. But yeah, I couldn't agree more.
But the challenge is what you just said is true for a lot of companies where most of the revenue comes from existing companies,
Right.
but most of their expense goes to bringing on new customers instead of to focusing on the ones that are keeping the lights on. And
Right.
that to me is that's the big cultural change that we have to get to is that our current customers are just as, if not more important than our future customers.
Yep.
Right. And
It's
frankly,
I'd love to make sure we understand that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we keep more of our current customers. We actually don't need to go out and get more new customers. Oftentimes, we're so focused on the new ones because we're replacing the old ones that have left.
Yep.
So I love what you're doing, Tanya. I feel like we could have this, a half an hour did not do this justice. We could talk for hours on this stuff.
Definitely.
And it's great to meet somebody who is so passionate about what you do. You are in a space that, let's be candid, is not known for its experience, or at least not known for its great experiences. And I love that there's people like you out there trying to change that one day at a time, one employee, one customer at a time. But I keep doing the great work that you're doing at Experian.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Great conversation, Dan. I was happy to be here.
Well, thank you. And before I let you go, will you just tell people how they can contact you or connect with you if they'd like to learn more?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. LinkedIn's going to be the best bet. I don't know if I have a link there anywhere, but you just look me up, Tanya Thomas.
Okay, I looked you up and you showed up immediately. So I think you're findable, which is awesome. All right, thank you so much, Tanya. Really appreciate you.
Sure.
And thank you as well for watching another episode. Really appreciate it. I normally have a promo image here. I don't have one ready today, but I'm going to tell you that next week we're going to have sort of a double feature. I don't do this very often, but I'm going to have two guests on. I'm going to have both Martin Wilkinson Brown and Mike Small. They're both from a company called Sitel Group, which manages call centers around the world. They're a fantastic company. Martin Wilkinson Brown is their CMO, and Mike Small is their CEO of the Americas region. So both really high up guys, great guys. I've worked with Sitel before. They were one of an early sponsor of my podcast. Really interesting company. And Martin actually is quoted several times in my new book. Hey, I just happen to have that new book right here again. It's called The Experience Maker, and it is available out on September 14th. I will see you right here next week and every week, Thursdays at noon Eastern on the Experience Maker Show. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Have a terrific rest of your week and a great weekend.